Hey everyone, welcome back. This is another Ask Andi where I have questions that have come in from many of you over the last week, and I'm going to answer as many of them as I can. If people do pop on, I don't have people. Summer is tough, and I'm trying to figure out the best time that works for you guys. We have so many different time zones. We have quite a few people in the UK, and oh my gosh, in the States, and in Canada. We have West Coast. I'm East. I'm in Ontario. So many different time zones to try to work around. So I'm trying to find the best that works for you. And summer, I know, is always very different for everyone. So I hope your summer is going great. It can be really good for some of our kids because they're not getting all that stimulation from school, unless they're in camps, and then they're thoroughly exhausted and all of the heat. Our heat has been crazy. Like what it feels like 38 degrees today, and we're usually like 23, 24, 25 Celsius. It's crazy. So yeah, it's all affecting our kids in different ways when they're being taxed and all of these things, different changes, different routines, different structure, just all of these things can really add up and affect our kids, especially, well, I mean, I'm saying especially during the summer, but it's really any time of year. So all of you parents, just know that I'm in your corner, and I just hope that you are finding some moments of really fun and relaxing time, and, just really making the best that you can with the child that you do have. So, you know what? I'm going to dive into that right now because I do have questions, but this might actually help a lot of you as well. So my neighbors have these kids that don't have all of these meltdowns, and they do well in, structured environments and in all of these groups and programs and all of these things. And they have their kids in all of these camps. And my kids are very different. My one child is a no camp kid, like absolutely no camps. He would rather just be home and almost sit and complain about being really, really bored than be forced to go to a camp for so many reasons. Just everything, change, transition, unknowns, all of these things, having to deal with so many different people and energies and noises and sounds, and taking in all of the new things just becomes so overwhelming for him that having to do that each week, it's just so much for him. Whereas when he was in school, it would be the first week of school, right? Getting used to the routines, getting used to the teacher, getting used to all of the different new kids and the new personalities. He takes in so much information that just becomes so overwhelming for him. So when we do camps, I have to stop and think about that it's not even about what the activity is, because loves rock climbing, loves Pokemon. Like, so many of his friends are actually going to a Pokemon camp this year. It's high level play. So this is another struggle for him as well. So he's going to know the majority of the kids there. He knows where it is. He knows the instructor. So some of those unknowns are taken out. The thing though, is that it's coaching. He's also going to lose games because these are top level kids. Some of these kids are, well, I know one of our good friends that we play with is ranked 100 for seniors, and he's one of the younger seniors. He's top 100 for North America. So that's like Canada, United States, Mexico, and all of the other countries that are part of North America. He is top 100, right? So this is a high level skills camp. And the pressure there, the pressure to be perfect, the pressure to not make mistakes. Also, the way that he takes in information is usually one step at a time, and it might be giving too much information at once for him, and he masks that until he can't. So these things really come up. And so I know that side. I now know and understand that side, but I never used to. And now that I do understand that side with him, I get that life is so much easier if he's just not in camps. And we all have all these different parts to us. So I have these other parts that are like, yeah, but these other kids are doing it. I could have some time alone, I could have full days in the office. And the thing though is there's all these parts that are like, this isn't fair that my kid can't do this and others can. This is also like, well, now I feel like I'm the odd man out and I'm like the weird parent that's not putting my kid in camps. And there's all of these different parts of me that kick in that have like this imposter syndrome or these things that society has made us feel to believe. That I've had to work through a lot of them, and I'm totally cool with it now. I'm like, nope, he doesn't do camps. And that's it. That's all I say to people. And they're like, and I'm like, nah, he doesn't do them. And I say it in a way that's just like, most people don't ask a lot more questions after that. They're just like, okay, because I just make it very factual and it is what it is without judgment or anything. It's just acceptance. And once I've been able to do that and step into my power of just saying, no, it's not for him, our summers are so much easier, right? We have friends that aren't in camp certain weeks and they all come into our house. We actually just, I was going to say our last name. We call it camp in our last name. And my kids have a different last name than me. And so then my husband's last name. So is if we say, it's camp this, their last name, and the kids all know, the parents all know that if their kids aren't in camps on certain weeks, then they come to camp, whatever. And my son is fine. That's what he loves. They're at our house where he can control things. If he needs a moment to himself, he can go get his moment to himself and he can come back. So it's where he can stay regulated, right? And I've had to meet him where he is at. And every year he's getting better and better at doing more things. He just went to my parents for a whole week and had a great time and is now looking forward to going. Whereas like 2-3 years ago, it would be, how long am I going for? What am I staying? What if I don't have this? What if that happens? Like just completely analyzing and questioning absolutely everything. And now he looks forward and wants to go. So it's been these steps of doing all of these things. My parents live in a cottage on a lake. It's like they're in the water all the time. This year they were canoeing and kayaking and paddleboarding and swimming and doing campfires and roasting marshmallows and making s'mores. And it's too hot for the sauna. They're ATVing. Like it's so much fun. And they're exhausted by the end of the day. And now he looks forward to it. But it's been the one thing, right, in a summer that he goes and does. So it's all these small things that I really have had to work around in my mind, that my child does not like as much stimulation, as much change, as much group activities, even though he's a very social child, very social child. And it's really hard to get myself around all of these things. And because that's not the social norms to be like that. So he's having more of the summers kind of that I grew up with, where my parents did work and I was home alone and had to really find my own things to do. And it's fascinating the stuff that he gets into. And when his friends are over, he has his great times. And he's had really boredom times, which is great for kids, to have these times where they're super bored and have to figure out what to do on their own and get themselves out of it, or just be okay to have that downtime. So it's not been easy every day. It's the best thing for him, the least amount of meltdowns. And then we go to my other child. My other child is very quiet and he likes more the one-on-one conversations, the more one-on-one interactions with people. He is in 2 camps. He's going to the Pokemon camp. He's also in a curling camp. He's a high-level competitive curler. And he's actually of age to finally go to this camp. And because it's for up to 18, it's actually competitive, like pros are there teaching. It's right before his competitive season starts. They do this week to get the kids all ready for the ice, because there's not ice actually. It's still in August, so there's not ice many places here in Ontario. There's only one other club that has ice other than this one. So all the kids go there and they train. And it's like a training camp is really what it is. So he's going to that. He's going to be so exhausted. He has one more week after that before school starts, but we homeschool. If we didn't homeschool, he would so need to just decompress so much after that week, and may still struggle with getting ready for school, because those group environments where there's so many personalities and energies and all of those things, he takes in the energies and they exhaust him. And so he likes doing sporadic camps and having time solo. So after him being at the grandparents last week, he needed a day of nothing. He stayed in his room and read a book all day. He came out to eat, he had a nap, all of that stuff. And it's what he needed, right? So we have all of these different kids. They're not all extroverts. They are not all ones that can actually keep up with all of the things at camps, because camps are usually fresh counselors. They're not tired teachers. And nothing against tired teachers as well. Teaching as well, they know that they have a full year to put everything in and to do everything. And it's not full on physical activities or whatever for the entire day, right? Whereas the summers are usually for us, it's full on either mental or physical activities, like the entire day, with new kids every single week, getting used to new instructors, new teachers who aren't used to teaching. It's a lot of high school kids that don't know how to manage all of the kids and all of those situations. So there's just so many factors going on with it, that I have kids that can't do a lot of extracurriculars, that don't want to do a lot of extracurriculars. They meet with their other homeschooling friends once a week still. They love it. And hanging out, board games, or out in parks playing and doing things. And then they meet with their friends and they do their things. So it's not where we have to be so overscheduled, I guess. Hopefully this does help some of you in just seeing too that all of these factors, the heat, all of these changes that can happen, and the different personalities can really overload and overtax our kids. So if you're having a tough summer and you have to have your kids in camps all the time because you have to work full time and you're getting a lot of meltdowns, just know that I see you, and just understand that after the camps, after you get home, it's okay for your kids to do nothing on the weekends, nothing on the evenings. If they need that time to completely decompress, it's okay to do nothing. And screen time doesn't necessarily fill that nothing. Screen time is still something that's filling that whiteboard of their brain with all this information. So it really is about just having that downed, chilled time, maybe what your child needs in order to be okay to, go to these camps. And if you can ever take them out sometimes earlier, or, give them a half day once in a while and have it planned ahead of time that they can just come home and chill, that might be what they need. All right, let's get to the other questions that we do have. So nothing works when my child is upset. How do I help them without making it worse? Shoot, did I answer this last week? Okay, if I did, I'll probably give a different spin on it anyways, because there's always so many different varieties what we can do. So nothing works when my child is upset. How do I help them without making it worse? So this is the hardest thing. Quite often as parents, we want to go into clownfish mode, where we want to fix. We want to help. We want to help them explain and understand what they're doing through. We want to get them to be using tools. We want to do all of these things. And are these things helpful? Yes, absolutely. The thing is that when our child is in this meltdown mode, it is not when they are capable of pulling out tools. It's not when they are capable of learning new things or understanding what's going on or having a rational conversation with you. They can't do it during that time. So when they're upset, how do you not make it worse? Hardest thing for a parent is to sit there and let them be. Not make a big deal about things and keep yourself calm. It is very hard to keep yourself calm sometimes when they are not calm and they're frustrating, especially when you're out in public. At the start of this for me, I know I used to feel like, oh, all the eyes are on me. Everybody's judging me. And once I let go of all of that and just sat there and let him do, just let him be, he gets over it a lot faster. So it is hard. We can listen when they say things, which actually, I know the next question I was going to bring in. Okay, you know what? I'm going to bring in these two questions together. The next one is, what if my child refuses to talk about what happened? So this goes along with what you would do during as well. So there's this book that I love. I don't have it. I lent it out. It's called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Chris is a FBI hostage negotiator, former FBI hostage negotiator. And through his time in hostage negotiation, basically, you need to let the perpetrator, whoever it is, you need to hold on a sec. And there we go. So what you need to do in a hostage negotiation is you need to let the perpetrator feel like they're in control. The thing is that you can't give in to any of the demands during a hostage negotiation. But the perpetrator, the criminal, needs to feel like they're in control. So in a hostage negotiation, Chris Voss, from his book Never Split the Difference, has had to learn all of these skills and tools to be able to have the criminal feel heard, feel seen, be able to open up and talk to you, and be able to find solutions that work. And actually these solutions work in like, you can't give in to their demands, right? Well, sometimes in the hostage, they do give some money, but a lot less money than's being asked for the hostage and stuff. So in all of his learning through that, he learned these phenomenal conversation skills. And he is now a business coach that teaches business people how to negotiate. He has actually worked with Harvard in their negotiation classes for business and everything. Like, it's phenomenal. So his book, Never Split the Difference. The very first chapter of what you learn is called mirroring. So mirroring is when somebody says something like, so when we're thinking of a child having a meltdown, right? When they're saying something like, I hate you, if you mirror what they say. So mirroring is where you take the last word or two of what they say, and in a very kind, curious voice, not a judgmental voice. If you do judgmental, it will completely backfire on you. If you do it in a kind, curious voice, word it as a question. So you just repeat the last couple of words. You like, you hate me? You know? Like, you can go, you hate me. And that's it. And they'll go, yeah. And they'll start blurting out all the reasons why they hate you. And the thing is that starts getting them to talk. It starts to get them out. And some of the things they might say will be hurtful, but the thing is that there's always layers to it, right? The hate you isn't the thing that they're mad about, but they don't even maybe know what they're mad about. The thing is if you keep mirroring, right? You keep mirroring with them. So this is chapter 1, the first chapter of Chris Voss's book, is the first lesson he teaches. It's mirroring. And if you mirror with these kids, you can start getting deeper and deeper and deeper in the levels. So like, yeah, you never let me do anything. And you're like, oh, I never let you do anything. And so anytime that you're repeating what they're saying, they're actually like, oh, she's listening. She's hearing me, right? And they still might be pissed, right? They'll be yelling at you. Like, yeah, you never let me do anything. You don't let me play video games, and you don't let me, eat what I want, and you don't let me blah, blah, blah. And they go through all these things. And then you kind of, maybe choose one thing from that and mirror it again. And the thing is when you're mirroring, it gets them to actually start opening up. So this is something when you're saying my child refuses to talk about what happened, there's could be many different reasons why a child is not telling you what happened. One is that they're totally embarrassed and ashamed, right? The other is that they're masking and covering up something else, and they may not even know what they're masking. They may not even know why that happened. It might have just been when a child has impulse struggles, they don't even know. They're like, it just happened. All of a sudden I needed to hit them, right? Or I didn't even know I was going to do it, right? They're being very honest with that when they didn't know. And so when you start mirroring sometimes, you can start helping them dive to the deeper root of the problem. Now, Chris goes through many different steps. This is a book I listen to every single year. And every year I go through it. So the first time I went through it, and I have a friend that I'm going through it with right now, for his first time, it's a lot to go through and then be able to implement it all. So it's one book where, and we listen to it. Chris Voss is such a great narrator. I love it in audio. So I do it while I'm being domestic and doing things all around the house, or going for walks or commuting. It's such a great book. And so what I did is I listened to the full thing so I could see how all the steps kind of work together. And then I went through the book again and started learning mirroring and just practice mirroring. So mirroring is great when, like, I am somebody that does not like small talk at all. I don't do well with small talk. I like deep conversations. So when I'm mirroring, if I'm at a group event, when I'm at a family event, family function too, where it's just like, most people are like, oh, say to the kids like, oh, what grade are you in? You must like it. Or how is this? I actually mirror what they're saying. If they say, oh, I'm in grade 3, like, oh, grade 3. And they're like, and then you just pause and you wait, and they'll sometimes elaborate on it. And then you can start asking them more questions. So Chris Voss that Chris Voss strategy helps me to actually have conversations with people when I am in groups where I don't know people, or I feel awkward, or I don't know what conversations to have. I just mirror what somebody says. So, and it's fascinating. And then you can get into all of his other tactics, but that is one that when they're in the middle of a meltdown, you can try. They still may not be ready. The thing too is if they're answering you and yelling while they're answering you, that's okay. The thing is that the more that they get it out sometimes, and they're being heard and listened to without judgment, they may calm down. The other thing too is sometimes you're just sitting there. So that was the first question, is nothing works when my child is upset. How do I help them without making it worse? Sometimes it's doing nothing except for working on yourself to be calm. Another thing you can try is this Chris Voss mirroring and some of his other techniques to help to get that child to get it out, to understand why they're upset, because sometimes once they understand why and they've said it out loud, it actually helps to take that emotion down. So those are two tactics that you can try with the nothing works with my child is upset, and how do I help them without making it worse? The other one is, what if my child refuses to talk about what happened? I would never try to really dive deep into this. So even if the Chris Voss stuff works, once the child is calm, I would leave them. I wouldn't dive into talking about it, helping them, fixing anything like that. I would not do it right then and there. The child has to go through being escalated to, this is the baseline. Once they're escalated, they come down, but they actually come down a little lower. And that's when we think we can talk to them, but we can't. We need to come back when they're actually like fully regulated. When you see them really not just quiet still in their room, when you see them out of their room, talking with people, laughing, joking, eating, doing things that they love to do, that's when you know that they're back above baseline, and that's when you can start talking to them. Now, if they're somebody who doesn't talk much, or they're embarrassed about what happened, right? That's where you can do what one of Chris Voss's techniques too is, it seems like, so you're going to name an emotion. You could be very wrong in the emotion that they had, or it seems like you were struggling with this. It seems like this upset you. And you say whatever you think you observed, and it might be very wrong. And you just sit silently. That is the hardest part. You sit silently, just like, it seems like you were really upset when, it was dinner time. And you just sit there quietly. And that's it. Sit there. Some kids take a while to think about what you just said, to formulate their answer, and to get it out. And sometimes if we don't give them enough time and space to answer, then we're on to asking them more questions and they're still focusing on the first one, and then they can't answer the second one. And then it gets into this thing where they get really upset and they just clam down and they don't say anything. So I have one child that takes quite a while to answer a question. He needs to really formulate it and get it out, which is part of his working memory in his brain. So you will have kids that just really do take a while to answer questions. He's also the one in class that will rarely put up his hand because it takes him longer to process questions. He's not the one that like quickly puts up a hand because he needs to take the time to formulate it and put it in his mind. So for a teacher too, asking a child a question and them not answering it right away doesn't necessarily mean they don't know it. It's like giving them that time to process it and answer it and letting the kids know. People take different amounts of time to answer a question, and we need to give everybody the amount of time that they need to answer it. So we need to learn to be good listeners. So that's where too, I've been actually considering we have a talking stick. So whoever's holding the talking stick is the one that gets to talk. And if they need to pause, they get to hold that stick until they have said what they've needed to say. So that means that I need to be quiet. And that's helping me understand and learn how long it's taking them to process the information and get it out. So if they're still holding the stick and they haven't handed it to me for my turn to speak, then they're still processing things in their brain. There may be some silence and space in there, and they may not, we need to wait for them to finish their thoughts. So this would be something for a teacher too, to be able to hand a class at the start of the year and go, okay, this is our talking stick. And when somebody's turn is to answer their question, they get the stick. And until they hand it back to you, they get to do their thoughts. Now, this could backfire because there are some kids that are very, 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 very chatty, right? And so those are the kids that you need to focus and redirect on what your question actually was. This is more meant for the kids that are very quiet, and also letting the other kids know that they need to stop and pause and let that child process for them to say things, and teaching them that conversation skill. And this is one thing that we're not taught a lot, as well as when we're in fix it mode, when we're in that clownfish mode, that we want to really fix and help with that child. It's really hard to, what do we say? It's hard to give them the space sometimes for the kids that do need the time to process. I know it's hard for me because I am one that is more shark and clownfish than I am turtle. So being able to actually pause and let that turtle take the time that they need to process the information and get it out and say everything that they need to say at the pace that they need to say it is torture for me at times. Torture. But it is a skill that I have been practicing a lot this past year. It's been something I've really been working on, is really giving that time and space for my one son and my husband to answer a question before I start saying more and asking more. It is not easy, but it is so important and so effective to be a much better listener. Okay. We do have somebody on the call, so I've let somebody in while I was doing that. If you have any questions, I'm going to open up the chat. If you do have any questions, feel free to pop your questions in here and I will answer your questions. Now we'll go on to the next question. I had a question. What are some hidden triggers that might make my child more reactive? Okay, this is a fascinating question because the list of things is unbelievable. Now, there's a book that is called, let me double check. I think, is it autism or what is autism? And this isn't about a child being autistic that I'm mentioning this book for. It is, I'll explain in 1 second. I'm going to find the name. Is this that line is between where it's autism and where this is a child that has certain sensitivities to things. Because in my experience in working with kids and working with adults and my own personal experience, where I have sensitivities, when I go through this, what is the book again? Is this, I always mess up the name, which is why I'm looking. Is this autism? Is this autism with a question mark? In this book, Is This Autism? As I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, I have worked through the years with so many parents, with so many kids, with myself, with because I don't know where the line is of like, where is it autism and where is it that we have a nervous system that is highly sensitive to things. Now, there are definitely some things in this book where it talks about like the perception, where they definitely do struggle to perceive social interactions and different things like that. But when it gets into things where this book talks about like just social settings and the you know, sounds, loudness in the sensory of what they're taking in auditorily, in all of these different things. Like, so many of these things are also executive functioning struggles. And when we have kids, when we don't have that part of the brain, the executive functioning piece of our brain, the part of our brain that manages our moods, that manages our ability to think and process and analyze and decision make, and all of these things that, and also one a big one too is where attention is, when we tend to hyper focus on certain things and we learn not to hyper focus so much, that our nervous system gets taxed. So I love that book because it has lists and lists and lists and lists of things that she says that if you're going to somebody that really dives into the deep depths of autism, that if your child had these things in the past or has them now, that they, and if they have a certain number of them, then it could be an autistic diagnosis. The thing though is, like, I'm going through it and I'm reading right now, like the one on flexible thinking, on perfectionism, fear of making mistakes. And I'm like, but you know, is that something that is autism? Like, where does that become autism, and where does that become a hidden trigger that makes my child more reactive? Because that's an executive functioning piece of the flexibility in their brain, which hasn't been solidified yet. That solidifies between the ages of 21 to 25. And some of our kids too, especially kids that are really ahead academically, struggle more on the executive functioning side. So a lot of that black and white thinking, perfectionism, fear of making mistakes, those are stressors for these kids, which taxes their nervous system and can be a stressor, which then can cause reactions, right? So I do like that book. Is this autism? But looking at it from a different lens, or what are all of the different stressors of a child? And what could a child be masking? It is fascinating in this book as well, because it goes through females, through girls, and how girls mask differently than boys. And for a teacher, it's a phenomenal book for a teacher to listen to from that lens of, these are all the things that kids could be masking in my class and could be having outbursts for, or being really quiet and turtling about, right? And I love looking at it from that lens in this book. It's so fascinating. So I would say there's so many things, and a lot of what they talk about in this book would be more on the executive functioning side, but there also still is the sensory side. So we have that sensory piece. So when you auditorily hear a lot, which could also be executive functioning, in that you're not able to modulate sound, that everything sounds really loud to you and you can't actually turn down that sound, down that modulation. Same thing, that modulation is huge, like in sports or anything too. If there's no middle ground, there's no like difference between when you're playing a fun game with friends when there's like kids that are like 4 or 5 playing with 10, 11, 12, and the 11, 12 can't adjust and adapt for a 4 and 5-year-old. That's like modulating the intensity of how you play a sport or how you play a game. They just need to win. They need to kick butt. There's no mercy, right? Intensities in sports, volume of their own volume. These are all modulation struggles, and not being able to modulate can be stressing them out as well. So, but auditorily as well, is that an executive functioning struggle? Are they also attention-wise hyper focusing on all of these sounds and not able to like decrease their focus on them? Those are all executive functioning that can affect hearing, but they also could really have like crazy hypersensitive hearing, which, you know, I have one child that the stuff he hears just blows me away. Same with visually, the stuff that he takes in, but he has had to learn how to modulate it. It used to be so overwhelming for him before as to what he took in visually, that anytime he'd walk in a room, he needed to stand there for 10 minutes, maybe longer, and take things in. I know when I used to go to places with my kids, I'd always bring them books. And so they would sit in a corner and read a book with their head down. And then they would look up in the room and observe and put their head back down. And now that I see that, I know that it was them modulating how intense taking in all of the new things in, because both my kids visually, the amount of stuff that they can see and take in visually can be so overwhelming. And eventually they'd put the book down and go and join in. So it wasn't a shyness. It was them actually learning how, self-regulating themselves on being too overwhelmed and walking into a room with all of the scents, all of the visuals, all of the auditories, tastes, like everything, all the feels going into that room. They taught themselves to self-modulate that, and not everybody can. So all of these things can become stressors. We get the sensitivities on the skin, right? Like there's kids, one of mine, that like the seams on socks, like the seams on anything, the tags in your clothes, the type of material, t-shirts, depending on how the printing is on the t-shirt. Like he prefers t-shirts with no printing on them whatsoever, because he can feel it even through the shirts on certain shirts, right? Some you can't, some you can. All of these things can stress him out. Then we have scents, right? I know for me, so we have synthetic fragrances. Basically, any fragrance that is in something, unless they are telling you that they are absolute, like organic compounds, although I think actually some organic compounds can still be toxic. I have to see. Yeah, I think they can. So it's more like if it's just a real fragrance, like it's actually real mint, or it's real lavender, or it's real, you know, whatever, it comes from like the oils of those into an essential oil. If it's something else, if it's just says fragrance in a label of something, the odds are it's a synthetic fragrance. The movie Stink is phenomenal in helping to explain all of this and how these get passed, but those usually contain toxin, but they're a secret ingredient to that product, so they don't have to disclose what the ingredients are, and they are toxins. So how I describe that for the ones of us that are sensitive to it is like a bomb sniffing dog. That dog can smell bombs, or a dog can smell drugs, or a dog can figure out before somebody's about to have an epileptic seizure, before other people know, before there are actually signs, before like they can smell those drugs before anybody else can smell them, or know that there's a bomb when people can't smell the bomb, right? That is where some of us are at with synthetic fragrances, and they can really affect us. I know for me, they used to, before I really worked on my nervous system and getting my nervous system so much stronger that it can handle stressors. I can now handle a lot more synthetic fragrances, but I never used to be able to. I used to go instant anger, instant. I would look at my husband and start yelling at him in the middle of a conversation if a scent went past me. It was crazy. I could not go in a grocery store anywhere near the soap aisle. I couldn't go to the soap aisle or the 2 aisles beside it, or I would instantly, my brain fog would kick in, energy would go down, and I'd be so irritated. And so this can also be something for our kids as well, is when their nervous system is firing until we get it. Now, does this mean that as I'm getting better and I'm less affected by these synthetic fragrances, that they're better for me? No, they haven't improved. A synthetic fragrance still goes into your body. Normally you have all these hormones that they go to a receptor site and they do what they do. They regulate your emotions. They help you be happy. They help you be calm. They help your reproductive system. They help your cholesterol, your blood pressure, your short-term memory, all of these things. These are all different pathways that these all take. And so they all have this car that they have their own car that they hop into and go to this receptor site and do their job. A synthetic fragrance and a hormone disruptor will steal that car, go to the receptor site. It doesn't know how to do the job. So it messes it up, can make you angry, can mess up your blood pressure, cholesterol, all of these different things. And it also can damage the receptor site. So synthetic fragrances will do that. So that is one thing where we have cleaned those out of our house. And so we at least don't have them in our home. So we only get them when we're outside. And it's made a huge difference on my kids, on myself, my one son and myself. Huge difference on that. And those can be stress triggers. So we have the environmental, which would be like synthetic fragrances. Environmental could even be like, they could be sensitive to blue lights. They could be sensitive to all kinds of other things. I know for me too, if I use certain soaps when I'm out and then I touch my face, I'll like break out. So we have environmental, we have all of the executive functioning that can be a stressor for kids, for adults, anybody, masking anything. We have the perfectionism, fear of making mistakes. We have the way that they're thinking, where their attention is, where their focus is. We have their impulse control, struggling with planning. We have also, then we have social things, right? Where somebody struggles to be in larger crowds. We have transition and changes. Like the list of stressors is huge, and we have to figure out where it is with them. Is it past traumas? It could be a past trauma when they were able to do everything because they were academically ahead, always able to do things physically, and all of a sudden one day they couldn't. That could have become a trauma in them because something that happens too fast, too much, too soon, before you're ready for it, builds that trauma in your brain. And that is where some of the perfectionism can come from in these kids too. So there's just so much involved in all of that. And like, there's just so much with these kids, right? Yeah, there's just so much with them, with all of these stressors that happen. Okay, so I'm going to read. For some reason, AI had moved everything and I didn't actually see your comments in here, the individual that's in here. So I'm going to read. ADHD diagnosis last August, being on meds has literally changed your life, which is so amazing. Super excited. And I know we talked about ADHD meds last time. Yeah. So being able to actually get activities and things done, like organizing things that you were not able to do for 25 years, feels amazing, and having a clear mind and less stuff around. So amazing. Like it is huge. And those meds can be like so phenomenal for some people, and then they may not work for others. So I'm so grateful that they did work for you. Both your kids have ADHD as well, and huge emotions, and getting frustrated at their behaviors in public. But when you learn about ADHD and anxiety, you found out it was out of their control. Yeah. They just didn't have the skills to regulate themselves, and it was totally fight or flight situation. Yeah. So this is the thing, is whenever it is that fight or flight, when they are in fight or flight all of the time, then yeah, it just makes such a difference. And kids being seen and not heard. Oh, I'm seeing and I'm looking at this. This is actually the chat. This is so interesting. This is the chat from last week. Okay, so I answered these questions and everything in last week's call. So sorry to anybody that is listening to this. Oh, this is so fascinating, because this is a reoccurring call thing. I guess that it keeps the chat going in all of this. So that is actually quite fascinating that it is doing that. So if anybody is on today, has any other questions or anything, I can definitely check those in the chat. But I believe that I have answered the questions today of nothing works when my child is upset. How do I help them without making it worse? I've answered, what if my child refuses to talk about what happened with the Chris Voss Never Split the Difference book? And I have gone over what are some hidden triggers that might be making my child more reactive. So there are so many hidden triggers. Oh, with the scent thing, I'm going to tell you that my child, when he was in school, he was in SK. And in October, we went to the meeting for the parent teacher interviews, which I think are just crazy. They're like 15 minutes. And the teacher said that he had been having outbursts and stuff. And I'm like, why wasn't I getting calls? And the thing is that there had been Halloween around a time change. And then I'd noticed as well, he started wearing 2 or 3 pairs of pants, 2 or 3 shirts to work. And I just thought, or to school. And I thought, oh, this is just a phase. Then I asked her, did they change any of the scents in here? Any of the cleaning products? Did they change any of them? And she's like, oh yeah, they got this really nice pine smelling disinfectant now. It's amazing. And I went, oh, that's it. You know, like you threw in also Halloween and the time change, but his outbursts were happening before, and the change of clothes, the extra clothes, but they have a lot of floor time in where they sit and have carpet time, and they, you know, are on the floor a lot in kindergarten. And I'm like, it's the cleaner, it's the scent. That's what's getting him. He cannot handle it. I already had his own soap that he used in the classroom. They weren't allowed to let all the kids, even though the teacher was on board with letting all the kids use the non-toxic soap. But if he uses that soap too, he'll get angry right after using the school soap. So those synthetic fragrances and stuff are definitely something to kind of maybe see if your child does, like after washing their hands with your soap, or washing their hair after having a shower. Are they like more angry or agitated from that? Brushing their teeth, different things. Hand sanitizer. Do they, when it's a smelly one? I can't do the really smelly ones. But if after using any of those things, do you notice a behavior? So a teacher, when kids are at a hand washing station, do you notice certain kids' behavior changes after they've washed their hands? Those are kids that may have a scent sensitivity to fragrances and to the fragrance of that soap. So yeah. Off the record, there was one teacher that actually I got her like a huge thing of the soap, and you just put it in a pump and you add a little bit of the soap with the water. It disinfects and everything. It's got the eucalyptus and lavender, which is antibacterial, and antiviral. And they used that in their class. They noticed a difference in the temperament of certain kids after hand washing stations. They just didn't tell them. They just kept it on the down low that they did it because they wanted to do the experiment to see if it actually would make a difference. And they did notice a difference. So definitely something with some of these kids that can be a stressor. All right. If there aren't any questions, I am going to sign off for today. I hope that you guys all have a great summer, and I think I will be seeing you next week. All right. Take care, everybody.